Is there something?
You know, this is a surprise for me because I didn't know I was conducting. But thank you all for coming here. And we're certainly going to miss our beloved grandpa and father, husband. Well, she's not here, but brother. What a guy he was. What a father he was to all of us. And so to remember him, we are all going to participate in this. There's 12 of us. We promise we'll try to keep it short. And so it looks from this program, we're just going to get started. Is that right? Who planned this? Oh, is there an opening prayer? Okay. Oh, yeah, right there. Annette Hancock, opening prayer. So we'll begin with the prayer by Kim.
Hold the microphone.
Thank you, Bruce.
Oh, there's seats up here. And there's 2 seats in here.
Our dear, kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this opportunity to gather and celebrate the life of our grandfather and father and friend Norman. We're thankful for his life, for the posterity and friendship that he and Muriel have created and given us. We're thankful for the wisdom that he gained and for the unique way of sharing that wisdom with each one of us. We're thankful for the guidance and direction that he gave us all, and knowledge and understanding. And Father, at this time, we ask that we will be able to have a true celebration of his life this day, that we will be able to enjoy the stories and memories that are to be told, and that we'll be able to converse and talk with each other and remember the fun times, amazing times that we've had with him. And Father, we ask that we'll be able to recognize the legacy that he has placed here on earth, that we will be able to share that with our family, and that we'll be able to proceed forward in life and remembering him and his legacy and all that he has taught us, and that we will be able to continue to share the love and support that he has had for each and every one of us, with all those around us, with those in our family, and everybody that we come in contact with. We ask thee to bless us, that we'll be able to fill with his spirit this day and know that he is here with us. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
So as on the program, we will begin with the life sketch by all of his children. And then following that, there'll be a musical number by his son-in-laws and grandsons. And then we'll have memories by the grandchildren. And then we'll close with the song Waltzing Matilda. Who's going to sing it, LeNell? Waltzing Matilda. Of the whole group. Okay, are the words on here? Okay, perfect. So to begin with, I was asked to share the memories of his early childhood, and hopefully I can be brief. And I just want to say this, that not many people know here, but as a young child, I don't know his age, 10, 11, he was sick, spent a year or two in bed, and we believe it could have been rheumatic fever, which caused problems later on in his life. That's why he had to have a heart valve replacement, and he was on Coumadin. And in the last years, that was probably a big part of his life, to make sure that his numbers were correct on the accompaniment. And as we know, Dad was a brilliant man. And so in 8th grade, he was the valedictorian. And then after that, he went on to Pima High, where he loved sports. He was the center on the football team. And even though he was probably not blessed athletically, he had determination. And with that determination, he was an all-star, outstanding center of the football team. But he also, and I'm going to share one quick story. And the reason I'm sharing this story is because I lived in the Gila Valley. Anybody that knew Dad and went to school with him told me this story. So I must have heard it 20 times from different classmates and people that he knew. So he started on football, but when it came to basketball, he didn't have a whole lot of skill. So he set the bench. And back then in Pima, where he grew up, or Lizard Bump, or whatever you want to call it, everybody there wore Western shirts. And so as you know, Western shirts have snaps, right? Correct? So if you've heard this story and you're familiar with it, raise your hand. How many of you have heard this story? Okay, I've heard it 20 times, like I said, from all his classmates and friends. So he was setting the bench. Coach called him out. Hancock, you're in. And he had a warm-up on, whatever they were back in those days. So he jumps out into the middle of the court, takes that warm-up, and he just rips all open like it was a snap cowboy shirt, and buttons going flying everywhere. The crowd is laughing. They stopped the game so they could pick up the buttons off the floor. Now that story went with him all his life. And so that's what I want to end with. And so I'll pass this on to Jan. I guess she's next.
I was given the part to talk about our mom and their marriage. First, I want to say I will miss Dad. I will miss his phone calls, his stories, and his sense of humor, and most of all, his care and concern. So all of us know on our birthdays, early in the morning, we get a phone call, and he would sing happy birthday. So let's all say happy birthday to him. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. So today is his 92nd birthday. So he was the first Hancock in the family line to go to college and graduate from college. So we went off around in 1949. He headed to Provo, Utah. And at the beginning of his, so he was there a few years. At the beginning of his senior year, he was out with a bunch of friends. They went and were stealing, borrowing apples in an apple orchard. And they decided to go back to these girls they were with to their apartment to bake pies. Getting over being sick. And when he walked in the apartment, over on the couch, sitting cuddled up next to some guy, was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen in his life. Muriel Miller, the sweet, gorgeous, wonderful blonde from Paul, Idaho. And it took a little scheming and planning, but pretty soon he won her over, and a few months later they were married in Idaho Falls, Idaho. After graduating from BYU, they moved to the homestead to Lizard Bump, where he farmed for a while, where his parents went to Mesa for just a few years, and Lynn and I were born there. And then when it was time to move on and they were coming back, they bought their first farm together, my mom and dad, in Yuma, and that's where LeNell was born. And then after a couple of years, he moved to Mesa, where Annette, JoAn, and John were born. Life was not always easy, and there were trials. Our family has always remained strong, and love endured. Dad always said marrying our mom was the best decision he ever made. They were married for 58 years, and Muriel was the joy of his life. growing up, I could never imagine my dad crying. I mean, if any of you knew him, he was tough. He got mad if we cried. But after Mom died, we saw him cry many times because he missed her so much. Well, in 2016, when he was 86, he called me one morning and said, I want you to come over and film a video of me. And he had been practicing, getting ready for Mom's birthday. And she had passed away in 2010. And so this was in 2016. And he'd written a poem, and he wrote lots of poems, if we all know. He wrote many, many poems. Well, he'd written a poem for her. And after reciting the poem, he got out his harmonica and played 3 songs, and you'll recognize them. He played You Are My Sunshine, Red River Valley, and Waltzing Matilda. And at the end of playing the songs, he said, those were her favorites. Happy birthday, Muriel. Love you, miss you. And he broke down in tears. I am happy to know that they are together again, and I would like to end with his poem. Give me a minute.
I am a very fortunate person. For 86 years, I have celebrated with and for people I love and admire on September the 3rd. My dad, Muriel, Jan, and Kristen, happy birthday. Muriel would be 86. And about her, things I need to say on this very special day to all of you. If I live 100 years and I shed 1,000,000 tears, they will never wash away the memory of her. We held hands that first day, and as her life slipped away, and many, many times in between. I remember she became my gal, and soon my very best pal. We did things together all the time. I remember her sweet smile as she welcomed every child to come and live with us a while and be our friend. I remember every sad but happy day as we gave them all away to Christmas. I remember Christmas time when I'd buy a tree to fit the wall, and she bought special gifts for all with great love and care, of course. I remember traveling everywhere, best of all with family there, with those bright and interesting shirts. Of course, time has slowly eased the pain. Mostly pleasant thoughts remain of great and happy times. If I live 100 years and shed 1,000,000 tears, they will never wash away the memory of her. She's my sunshine.
Lynn, or Annette, sorry. Thank you, that was wonderful. I get to share about his teaching years. And my dad reached a lot of people in his life, but probably the most influential was his teaching career. He graduated from BYU in accounting, and then he decided to become a teacher later on. He had heard talked to his cousin LeVar, and felt like he could do some good with teaching, and it was also a great career for a farmer because he was still farming at the time. And so he would teach during the school year, during that winter month, and then in the summer he would go farm. And so we got to spend a few years up in the Yulee house, and we lived up there. It's in Fort Thomas, up by Stafford, and we would spend our summers there, and then he'd come back and school teach. But he loved the older grades. He taught mostly 4th, 5th grade, and 4th, 5th, 6th grade, and he loved 5th grade the most. And I just know the big impact that he had on so many people. I know all of us through these years have had people tell us, oh, your dad was my favorite teacher, and the good that he did. And so one friend that I have, he loved the older grades because he could tease and joke with them and felt like he could really make a difference. And a friend named Wendy, she said, Mr. Hancock was my favorite teacher. I loved because he teased us, he joked with us, and he made us each feel special and important. And that's what he did for all of us and all of his grandkids. He made us feel special and important, whoever was there with him. And one time, she said, we earned a pizza party. Oh, she loved it because he would have a banking system, and then they had a little store. He kind of did things different. He was a very creative teacher. And one time they had earned a pizza party, and so he went out. Oh, she also said, Mr. Hancock taught us not to be gullible. And so anyway, they earned this pizza party, and he's like, I'm going to go get the pizzas and order them. And a little while later, he came back and said, I'm sorry, class. He's telling the class, they are out of pizzas, no pizzas today. And she said, Mr. Hancock, I don't believe us. Believe you. You taught us not to be gullible. So he did. He always taught us that. Don't be gullible. Just a month ago, I went to high school reunion, and I was so surprised when one of my classmates came up, Roland, and he said, your dad, he started talking. I didn't know he had my dad as a teacher. And your dad was my favorite teacher. He lived with his grandma. His mom was young in wedlock, and he never knew his dad. And his dad had gone to fight in Vietnam and was a POW and never came home. But my dad just kind of took him under his wing, and he just said how that made such an impact in his life. He went a little bit later and found another classmate and came over, and he said, your dad, I loved your dad. He said he turned me around. Because I was in a classroom. I pretty much sat in the back of the classroom with the cubicle always around me because he was always in trouble, and he hated it. And so he got moved into Mr. Hancock's class like a lot of the troubled kids would. My dad would have a lot of the harder kids always got put in his classroom. And he said, I got in there, and he changed my life. He really made a huge impact on my life. They said how they loved his stories. They loved his stories about Australia and the crocodiles. And we all know my dad's the best storyteller. And so he made things fun and exciting. And one other quick story was when this was probably 6 to 9 months ago. He was kind of having a down day, you know how you do, and thinking, what is my purpose? Did I do any good in the world? You know, what have I done that's good? And that day he went out to the mailbox, and he got this letter from Germany. And he thought, do I open this? What is it? And he did. He opened this letter, and it was from one of his classmates, a female that he had close to probably 60 years earlier, close to 60 years, 55 years earlier. And she wrote and said that how much she loved him as a teacher. She became a teacher because of him. She was only in his classroom one semester, and because her dad was in the military, and that semester just made such an impact that I went into teaching and graduated. I'm just going to read a couple of her words. Sticky. Sorry. Even though I was only in your class for half of the school year, I wanted to let you know how much of an impression it made on me. I remember you as my favorite teacher. That semester had a deep impact on me as a 10-year-old, and I have carried with me all these years. You were fair, you expected us to do our best, and you cared for us. that was so important to me because my beloved father was not present for that year, and I needed a strong male role model in my life. I want to thank you for being my teacher. I know he made he impacted hundreds of his students. And one quick story, he would talk about raising, they had cattle, and cows growing up. And he told this story to me a few different times. And, with my grandkids, and we can apply it to teaching and to all of us, he said, there would be times we had to get all the cattle and we had to herd them, and they would take them, I thought he said somewhere up to Saffron, I'm not sure, Vaughn might know, but they had to herd them all, and so they would get them, and he said some would be at the front and some would be going fast, some would be way in the back and they'd be going slow, some would veer off this way and others in that direction, but he said in the end they all made it and they all got there. And so Dad, you made it, you did it. He was strong till the end. We love you, Dad, and we were so fortunate to have him these last 11 and a half years past my mom to have his love and meet him and our family.
Wow. I get to talk about him being our dad. And if you and your friends were together and you heard someone say, or your dad say, those are the cutest girls in the neighborhood or in the world or on the block. Look at those beautiful girls. All the time he would say that about me and my friends. If your dad was the one that coached you and helped you with your talk for primary or Sunday school, and you had to say it 7 times in the mirror, which I didn't do that to this one, so I hope he forgives me. If you were told that if you put too much sugar on your grapefruit, you were going to turn into a butterfly. If your dad was completely understanding when he had to stop the car from Mesa to Pima because most of the children in the car had to get out and throw up because they were car sick. But he was very understanding about that because he grew up being car sick. If your dad and uncles could be taunted and coached and begged during a family reunion to chase you and your cousins and tie you up to a tree, not really tie you up to a tree with really good knots. And then you all worked hard together. Darvel would be the first one to get out of the knots, and he would go and start freeing all the rest of us. And then we'd finally get free, and it took us quite a while. And then what did we do? We ran back to our dad and our uncles, and we yelled at them, screamed at them, you can't catch us. And it went all day long. And I think they loved to do that because they had a little bit of peace and quiet when we were all tied up. If it was never strange to you that the annual Easter picnic, Hancock Easter picnic, was a month after Easter, our friends would say, it's a month after Easter, but we didn't get it. It was our Easter picnic. And so, yeah, it's our Easter picnic. And that you would spend the whole day playing with cousins, hiding Easter eggs, eating marshmallow brownies, watching the men play horseshoes. If when you were married and you got a phone call from your dad and he said, you have 30 minutes to get to my house. And so you rushed in, got your kids in the car, and you rushed to his house. And then he said, you have 1 hour. He handed to you and your sisters 1 hour to spend this $100 at the mall. And you raced to the mall, and if you didn't spend it, you had to give it back to him. So, and you spent the money. If you heard many Jalabu stories that even your little brother's friends, or John's friends, that just lived across the street, and they were so afraid in the daytime to walk over to their house after they had heard some Jalabu stories. And I think Lenny and Sandy are back there. They've heard plenty of Jalabu stories. And you listened for the crickets, because if the crickets were chirping, then you were safe from Jalabu. If the lights would be turned off often in the house, even if you were in your bedroom and the lights came out, then Norman Hancock was your father. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't always April Fool's jokes, fun, laughter. There were many doldrum days. We were threatened with a fireplace shovel. I don't think I got spanked by it, but I think all the rest of my siblings did. I was the perfect child. If you, let me see. Oh, if we didn't hurry and get the dishes done. It was always get the dishes done. There were many times I ran to my bedroom and slammed the door as loud as I could, being so mad at my dad. Many times. That was life, and there were hard times and sad times. But Dad had many soft spots. He could be talked into building a swimming pool in your backyard. I was in 7th grade. It was we were so excited to get our swimming pool. He let John have almost any animal in the book. I think John had hundreds of animals. I had guinea pigs and a dog, and my kids will be shocked because I'm not really an animal person, but I did have a lot of animals. John had a motorcycle, and we all had cars. What I love is the changes that I saw in Dad. When we grew up, and maybe it's our English background, but we never, ever said, I love you. It just was not said in our family. Do you Hancocks, did you guys say that? No, we just didn't say, I love you. And so I was in a BYU class, and I got an assignment, and I don't know if I picked the assignment or what, but to tell my dad I loved him. That made me so nervous. And I would talk to him every now and again on the phone, but in those days, long distance was very expensive, and we only got like 4 minutes, on the phone. And so I would try to get so brave to say I love you, but it took a few attempts. And finally, on a phone call, I said, I love you, Dad. And he was just like aghast. He was like, love you too. And so I did my assignment. I think we did after that say a little more, I love you. But this story would shock the grandkids because most every text, who knew how mushy he was? Had no idea. Most every text or phone call. What was it? Everyone say it after me. Love you, love you, love you, love you, love you, love you. And we got many of those. And I kept, is this my father? And it was a wonderful change to see. And the other change was we rarely got a family picture. And if we did, it was with a lot of grumbling, and it was a nightmare to get a family picture. And my dad was the worst. And I thought the picture would be here, and I was going to pull it up. But when we were at Mount Rushmore, you can see him, and we're taking a family picture, and he is walking away because he's so mad that we're taking a family picture. And so we get the family picture, but you see him to the side walking away. And later on in years, he was really embarrassed about that. And he, told me a few times how embarrassed he was about that. And I don't know what happened I just stared at him going, is this my father? But how many of you would come to his house and he would say, let me take your picture, right? Did he do that? I was like, this is not my dad. And he would get his little phone and he would tell Siri to do it. I didn't even know you could tell Siri to take a picture, but he figured it out and he would take your picture. Shocked me. And one time I was scrolling through his pictures. He has a lot of really good pictures on his phone of us. And he would say, stand up there, let me take your picture. And I'm just still shocked, but that was my dad. And I loved seeing those changes. We had many wonderful conversations with my dad. And most of the time they were about stories, of him farming, of him growing up, of him teaching school. He would always tell me the story of when I almost drowned on the river when he was holding me. And there were stories in my volleyball lessons. I think he told that 150 times. I won't tell it because I hate it. And I just really had the most amazing childhood anyone could ever have. I loved my childhood. And it's because Muriel and Norman were my parents.
everybody's done such a wonderful job. I don't know. But, so I get to talk about the farm. I think I'm just going to share a few stories. But first, when he was younger, like in probably his 70s, I'd go horse riding quite a bit, and I'd always call him, or not always, but every so often I'd call him, I'd try again, and I'd say, hey, you know, it's beautiful outside, let's go on a ride. And he'd always respond the same thing. He'd say, well, how much are you going to pay me? He says, I grew up on a horse. He says, that's work to me. And, you know, he always told stories about herding him up into the hills and to the different fields. And then, you know, when I first started out in business with him, we had the video game business, and I kind of struggled. We had a foreman that was just tough as nails, and I'd always have to work with him to do the game relocation or the moves, and so he told me a story about when he was herding cattle, and he said, we had a great big Brahma bull, and he says, and that thing was aggressive and tough. He says, you couldn't herd that thing like you herd the normal cattle. And was it Annette? I guess it's another herding story, but he says, you just kind of coaxed it along. He says, you didn't push it like you could the others, because that thing would turn on you, and he'd knock your horse right to the ground. Well, you know, that really fit me, because he told me how you just had to get creative and be patient, and you'd get it there, just like kind of told Annette a similar type story. And I often wondered if they actually did have a Brahma bull. Vaughn? But he said that thing was just a beast, and I thought, well, maybe he just made that up to you know, help teach me a lesson on how to kind of work with people a little bit better. And then, you know, there was a few times I wondered, well, maybe he taught me that to work with him a little better, because, you know, I tell you what, if he got mad, you get out of the way. But one thing with the farming, he believed that you should go walk on the farm, meet with the renters often. And every year, they had the South Dakota farm, every year they would go to South Dakota, usually in October, because it's just beautiful there, him and my mom. And they loved that trip together. Well, one year they went, and it was when he used to walk every day. Well, she wasn't feeling well, so she stayed in the room, and he went walking. And he's told me this story quite a few times, but there in Watertown, South Dakota, they would plant flowers along the side of the road. Well, he's walking, he kind of felt bad that she was not feeling well. And so he picked her a great big bouquet of flowers and brought them to her. And he kind of would always say, you know, when you do it yourself, it just has more meaning. Well, he took him to her, and he says, you know, your mom wasn't the best at expressing herself. He says, I could tell she just loved that. He's told me that quite a few times. I don't know if anybody else heard that story, but another story that he's told me quite a bit about Australia, and everybody, I'm sure a lot of the people know that it was kind of a program with the government to sort of like a homestead, and they had to develop the farm, get a crop, and they could get their deeds to the land. Well, when he left 5 kids behind and a pregnant wife. And he's told me a few times that after he's there a couple of weeks, somebody told me, says, you know, he was bragging about how beautiful it was there and how exciting this was. And the guy says, you know, you still think Mesa's just on the other side of those hills. He says, mate, it's a long ways away. And I think from then on, he got real homesick. And I know that they had a chance to get some housing in town, but he was so determined to get that farm developed that he did not want to bother with anything other than developing that farm. And so they slept under a tree. I think most everybody's heard this. But as they got the farm developed, they needed to get the ditches cut so they could get water to grow their crop. That was kind of the last thing they had to do, but plus planting their crops. Well, part of this program with the government, they promised that they would let them use road graders to get the ditches cut. Well, they couldn't get the road graders out there. So finally, they elected him to go to the office to see what was going on. And he went in, and the guy right away just says, you know, we've got the road graders all tied up. We're doing some road work. We can't break anything loose for you. Well, he begged and pleaded, and he explained, you know, we've done our part. You guys promised us these graders. He says, sorry, mate, I can't help you. It's going to be 3 or 4 months. Well, they were running out of money. He was missing his family. He had to get back to his job and provide for the family, so he didn't have that. He walked back out to the car, and I can only imagine how exhausted he was. I mean, they were working, tired, you know, to no end, sleeping under a tree, stressed out. And so he sat there a minute, and I think most people would have just gone home. Well, he got back up, walked back in the office, and he says, hey, let me get your name. Can you spell it out for me? And the guy kind of looked at him, and he says, okay. And he says, yeah. He says, we're done for. If we can't get those road graders, we're done. We're going to go back to camp. We're packing up, and we're headed out. He says, but I know that the newspaper reporter is going to ask us what went wrong. He says, and I just want to make sure your spelling is correct for the newspaper. Well, the guy walked back to his office and came back out and says, you know, I think I can break one of those road graders loose for you, and you should have it by next week. Now, that's how the story was told to me. Maybe Bond would know if that was true or not, but it kind of just told me about his determination, and you just don't give up. You figure out a way. Well, about 25 years ago, all the kids were able to go to Australia with mom and dad, and I know Jace was there. And Jace and I just talked about this story, but we got into the airport, and there were so many airports, and there's so much confusion. I don't remember which one, but one thing my dad learned is that you pack lightly, and you be ready to go. And I know we had a time crunch to get to the next terminal for the next flight, and he grabbed his bag, and he was headed off. And I think Jace says, well, Norman, where are we going? He says, every man for himself. And they said, well, who's got the tickets? And he says, Muriel. He says, every man for himself except Muriel. And I looked back at my mom, and she had a look on her face that of pride that her whole family was able to come and look at this accomplishment that they did. But more than that, and you know, maybe she doesn't express herself verbally, but I could see it in her face. She knew how important she was to getting this done. He could not have done it without her. Thank you, man. I hope that wasn't too long.
Listen all day. Well, the part of being last is, sorry if I repeat some of these stories, but I have the last 11 years of my dad's life, probably some of the best years for us kids with our relationship with him. On June 25th, 2010, our mom passed away, and leaving our dad all alone, and he never, ever thought this would happen to him. Shortly after, I got a text from him telling me that he had started the dishwasher, and he was so proud of himself. And that's how it went from then on. If something needed to be done, he would figure it out, and he didn't want to be a bother to anyone. In the last 11 years that he's been in his 80s and 90s, he's become extremely resilient. Rarely did he complain or let us know of the deep sorrow and loneliness he was feeling or the aches and pains that he was going through. He was upbeat and positive as he traveled through his aging years. Just a few months back, he was in the hospital with COVID, and then about a week or two later, he went back in with some severe stomach pains. So we got him some living in home hospice when he got home to help care for him. And they did a good job. They cared for him, and they offered to take care of his medications, but he was really good at his medications and wouldn't have anyone meddle with that. But he appreciated the care. And then when he started to feel better, it was a bother to him to have to wait around for him. So I got a text one day that said, I fired hospice. He was done with them. But he said he didn't want to waste taxpayer money, and he would get along just fine without them. He always had a reason to make it, as he would say, or to stay alive. Maybe it was to see a great-grandchild be born, or to see a grandchild living far away come to visit, or especially to see some of his grandchildren return home from missions. They were always grand reunions. He loved them and he missed them. In these last years, his heart became so soft and tender. He really came to appreciate and dearly love each of his children and grandchildren. And for me, it was the first time I heard him telling us he loved us. But I think he started telling all of us that. I didn't realize he was telling me now that sooner. But he would call and check on us all the time. And he almost daily called his siblings, Fawn and Alice and Linda. And Alice has told us how important those calls were for her and how much she appreciated them. He also kept in touch with our mom's siblings and with a lot of his cousins. He was really good at keeping family bonds strong. And if he thought about someone, he would call them. And in these conversations with him, I think we've all heard him say, well, that's enough about me. Tell me about you. How's your family? How are you doing? He loved to hear everything going on in our families and what we were up to. I had the opportunity to spend the last 5 hours with him in the hospital. And none of us knew that this would be his last time on earth. And the conversation that whole time had gone as it had many times. He told me of the great qualities of my children and grandchildren. He was texting, he was making phone calls. Even after he texted one granddaughter, he said, I just want her to know I was thinking about her. And I think that's how it was with all of us. He just wanted us to know he was thinking about us. He also had me give him a number, and he proceeded to tell me great detail about that president of the United States. His mind was incredible. He had such a great memory. If I had known this was going to be our last conversation, there's so much I would have said. Mostly, I would thank him for loving us in a way that only a father can, and for teaching me through his great example. And there's so much we learned from his great example. Most of all, how to have fun, how to make everything fun, how to care for others, how to keep family close to you and to see the best in them, how to not complain, and how to treat that person who is visiting you like they are the most important person, that they matter, and that they are your favorite. He also taught us how to boost others up and to make their day brighter. I would tell him how much I love his sweet and tender heart, and that he had become the father of my dreams. He was good at giving advice, and some of the best advice that I've ever heard him give was, when it comes to family, you just have to forgive. We just have to forgive and not hold grudges. After Mom passed, he would often say, I was born in a crowd, I raised a crowd, or I was raised in a crowd, I raised a crowd, I worked in a crowd, and now I don't know how to be all alone. We're grateful that Karen came along so that he didn't have to be all alone. Well, Dad, you're back with the crowd, and Muriel is by your side. We all miss you already, and we love you, love you, love you.
Some bright morning when this life is o'er, broad celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. When the shadows of this life is gone, I'll fly away. Like a bird from these prison walls, I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Oh, how glad and happy when we meet. I'll fly away. No more cold iron shackles on my feet. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly where joys will never end. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. I'll fly away.
So one description of Grandpa would be fun and playful. We all know he loved to razz people and joke around and tell funny stories. Some of my biggest entertainment was listening to him on the phone with Uncle Vaughn, teasing him, and especially LeVar. He loved to razz LeVar. And he provided so much entertainment for me and my friends. When he passed away, I had a flood of text messages from my friends who had all met him, from all Greg's friends, Kent's friends. Everyone reached out. He entertained all of them. Sitting on that couch was some of the biggest entertainment. One time there was a gentleman by the name of Bob Sellers. He wanted to borrow some money to buy some land around Bisbee, Arizona. And the only way to access this land was a helicopter. So Grandpa, my dad, Kent and Greg, they all went down to Bisbee and they flew on the helicopter and looked at this land. And then afterwards, they were eating lunch. And Bob, he ordered a Coke, but Grandpa, of course, was too cheap to buy a soda. So he had water. And Bob, as soon as the soda was served, he went to the restroom. And while Bob was in the restroom, Grandpa grabbed the Coke and just started guzzling. And he drank that thing down to half a cup, or half full. And then Grandpa grabbed his water and poured it in the soda and filled the Coke all the way up to where it was when Bob had left. So then Bob got back from the bathroom, and Bob took a drink of the soda, and he said, "Woo, that is a good soda." Another description would be charming. He'd take us to McDonald's to play in the play place, so we'd go to his hideout, and he was always charming. The waitresses, he was always making friends. He always made a friend anywhere we went. And he would charm my wife, Celine. Her description with him was complimentary. He was constantly giving her compliments. Comparisons to Grandma Muriel. He would compliment my sons. And then supportive. So about a year ago, I took a job with a 45-minute commute. And so I decided, all right, I'm going to take this time, I'm going to start calling Grandpa. So I'd call him at 6 a.m. in the morning, and he'd always answer. And he just, you'll hear a lot of us grandkids say this, he just made you feel like the most important person, his favorite person. And I'd come away from these conversations at 6 a.m. in the morning feeling like I could conquer the world. He just made you feel like you could do anything in life. I'd be rolling into work, like getting off the phone with him, and I felt like the world was my clam, and that's just what he did. He was super, super supportive to all his grandkids. And then one last story, I've heard him quote me and tell this story a gazillion times. So I was real young, and he took me to the Reed skate park. And my mission was to jump down the 10 stairs on my skateboard. And in skateboarding, you either have to commit to the jump or don't do it, because otherwise you'll get hurt. And so I rolled up to this 10 stairs, and I would stop. I'd roll up to it on my skateboard and stop. Roll up to it, stop. And I must have done this 15 or 20 times. So then I got back to the truck, and Grandpa, he'd been observing this the whole time. And so he asked me, well, Matt, why did you roll up to that jump so many times and just stop? And I said, well, Grandpa, I had to get my mind right. I couldn't get my mind right. So the last couple of months before he departed, he went to the hospital a couple of times, as we all remember. And he just couldn't get his mind right until finally this last time he got his mind right. And so he could depart from us. And it's been a rough couple of weeks for all of us, and I've had to take some time to get my mind right and to be able to give this talk. So I just want to close. I know you're out there somewhere listening, Grandpa. I love you, and I'm proud to be your grandson.
Okay, for those that don't know, I'm JoAn's daughter. I've been chosen to talk about what me and my siblings, McBride grandkids, have said about Grandpa. Each of us could spend hours sharing our wonderful qualities and ways that we've been blessed by him, but I'm sure everyone will appreciate me just being really brief. As has been said before, every one of his grandkids will tell you that you were his favorite, and he was always interested in our lives and supportive of all of our endeavors. He had an amazing ability to remember the little details each of us shared with him, ask questions, and show support. He followed my older brother Jeff's career in computer business. He would frequently employ him to provide tech support and listen to his advice. After Jeff passed away, I remember him asking when Jeff's son Carter, who was 5 at the time, would be ready to take over Jeff's tech support duties. He loved Jeff the way he loved each of us, and he showed it. Kristen is the athletic one of the McBride clan. Grandpa loved to follow her progress and attend the games. Kristen remembers after a game joking with Grandpa about cheering. He was saying things like, number 1, you're so fun. Number 8, you're great. And then he said, number 4, you're a 4. Maybe not the most appropriate.
That's awesome.
Katie is our teacher. She was a special education teacher. Grandpa loved having a grandkid who followed in his footsteps. Her most treasured memory is of Grandpa visiting her classroom to observe her teaching. Her students were so excited to meet him, and he often spoke about what a great experience it was to have that opportunity. Katie loved having long talks with Grandpa about teaching, the struggles, the triumphs, and the rewards. He was a fount of wisdom. I have lived outside of Arizona for the past 23 years. Most of my relationship with Grandpa, like a lot of you, has been over text. I love that he would text each of his grandkids and whatever great grandkids had cell phones. I know we text my oldest 4 kids quite frequently. I loved waking up in the morning to a middle of the night text from Grandpa where he would tell me how he loved me, how proud he was of me and my children. Our favorite game was Guess What Grandpa Meant and how his friend Siri got it wrong. Grandpa taught me, by example, one of the greatest lessons in my life. He taught me the importance of kindness, love, and treating those around you like family. Every in-law, every friend, everyone here knows that when you walked into his house, you were family. He treated us with kindness, respect, and love. I've strived to emulate that with my children. My children know that in our home, friends are welcomed and loved, people are treated with respect and value. I've seen the impact that it's had on my children and their friends. My house is far too often the place to hang out. I credit the lessons I learned growing up. Grandpa's wisdom and legacy lives on in my home and in each of the lives and homes of his family and all those he touched with his kindness. Grandpa, I love you, I love you, I love you.
So I'm a procrastinator and I haven't really prepared much for this. But I'm just going to go through and talk about all of our different siblings' experiences and memories of Grandpa. And most of us in the Heywood family, we all grew up in Utah and Idaho, and so we didn't really have many experiences because we lived so far away. So most of our experiences were during Christmas and family reunions. But Dave, he got to live some of his life here in Arizona. And he said he remembers one time him and Grandpa went to go see about an investment. And it was these 2 guys who were from the Middle East somewhere. And their names were Frank and Fred. And they had a soap business. And so Dave talked about how him and Grandpa in the car were like, isn't that a little suspicious that they're from the Middle East and their name is Frank and Fred and they make soap? So that was a funny story from Dave. And then Jamie said that she remembers going to Costco with all the grandkids at the time, and Grandpa put them all in the big cart, and Grandpa just rode around through Costco with all the grandkids, and he would just do that all the time, take us to McDonald's or Costco or wherever we wanted to go, he would take us. And then Jake said that Grandpa would rile them up, like Jake and Tyler and Landon, get all the boys riled up about some big football game or a poker game and get them to bet against each other and just get them all excited over just little things like that. And then Ryan said that one time at a family reunion, all of the grandkids, the older grandkids, were going to Six Flags, and Ryan was ready, excited, about to go out the door, and Grandpa said to Ryan, "I will pay you $100 not to go to Six Flags today." Just to see what Ryan would decide. What would Ryan decide? And Ryan decided to stay and take the $100. And he said he didn't regret it. He wanted that $100. And mine was also at a family reunion
we were with, it was me. I was in Grandpa's condo with Emily and Grandpa. And I think Grandpa was maybe making fun of Utah or something along those lines. And I was getting a little angry at Grandpa. And so just because I have 3 brothers and just out of, impulse, I punched Grandpa. And Emily goes, "You punched Grandpa? I can't believe it." And I felt so bad. And Grandpa goes, "Bethany, that didn't hurt here. It hurt right here." And so he just was so fun, and he always made us feel special. And we always had a blast. And he made all the cousins feel closer to each other because we did all feel so special. And yeah, thank you.
Well, Grandpa was an entrepreneur and he was tough. This is a story that I heard, so obviously I wasn't there to remember it, but Grandpa told it that back when he was young and they were selling eggs in the Gila Valley, and he remembered going up, and I think it was with Vaughn or someone, that whoever he was doing it with, they drive up to this house to go deliver their eggs, make their all this agreement that they have with this customer, and Vaughn gets out to take the eggs up to the doorstep. And as he opens up the gate to go into their front yard, this little dog runs around the corner and is barking and runs up to Vaughn and is acting like it's going to bite him. And so he backs out and he shuts the gate. He's like, "I'm not going in there." And Grandpa, what makes the story good is if you can picture in Grandpa's voice, the way he gets all riled up. He's like, grab those eggs, give me those eggs. He opens the gate. He's like, "I'm going to go deliver them." Walks up to the gate. He knocks on the door, and the homeowner opens, and just as he's about to give him the eggs, this dog runs up and bites him on the leg, and he yells, and he, gives the eggs, and he shakes the dog off, and he's all mad. He turns around to walk back to the car, and that's where Vaughn's rolling around on the ground, just dying, laughing at him. And obviously, Grandpa had a good sense of humor because he could, tell that story, and he could laugh about it later on. And another thing I remember about Grandpa is he must have had butterfingers because for some reason, when I was younger, I remember him coming over and he would reach in his pocket and he would accidentally drop 100 quarters all over the ground, and we would hurry, run, and pick him up. And he always had loose change for us or something to just make us be super excited to see him. And then I just wanted to share, I know all the grandkids have thought this, but he always made it seem like you were his #1 grandkid, and he would make you feel so special. And I remember one Saturday when I was younger, I was probably 12 years old, and I woke up and it was summer vacation and I wanted to buy something, and so I wanted to earn some money. So I had made my way over to Grandpa's house, of course, and I'm mowing his lawn and doing yard work for money. And again, he had someone over, I don't remember who, and they see me working and sweating, and they ask Grandpa, they're like, "Norman, who's this kid out there? Why is he working so hard?" Grandpa's like, "Well, I'm going to pay him $20 to mow the front yard, and if he wants, I'm going to pay him $20 to mow the back." And that's when whoever was turns, and they're like, $40 for yard work? He's like, "I bet you could find someone, on the corner of Gilbert and Broadway to do it much cheaper." And Grandpa's like, "Well, that may be true, but," he's like, "you don't know Zach. He's the hardest worker you can find. You're not going to find anyone to mow grass better than Zach." And he starts bragging on me the way Grandpa does. And so that's when Bond turns and he's like, "Well, okay, then it sounds like you're getting a really good deal. You should be paying this kid $100. And Grandpa, that's when he leans up and gets into it. He's like, $100? I'm not making money off of this grass here. He's not mining coal out there for me. But Grandpa was always a good time, and he knew how to make you feel special. And I remember my last memory of Grandpa was in Christmas Eve. I had the opportunity to talk to him and update him on my life and everything. And I woke up on Christmas morning to a text, of course, from Grandpa, and he said, "Those were really precious moments we were able to spend together, Zach." And they really were. You love me, Grandpa.
So my name is Aubrey. For those of you that don't know, but it's really difficult to sum up memories from an entire lifetime into just a few minutes, and there's a lot. Some of the first things I remember is as little girl cousins at his house on a Sunday, he let us ride our roller skates to the corner store, and he like put some money on the table, and he said, "Now you found this money. Don't tell your moms that I gave it to you, because I don't want them to be mad at me for letting me ride your roller skates." So we're these little tiny 7, 8, 9-year-old girls riding our roller skates down to the store, and Uncle Pete drove past, and we got in big trouble, and it didn't matter that we found money. Still mad at them. He always told us great stories, which have been mentioned before. Jalibu, stories about Australia, stories about our parents at Yuli's, and details about aunts and uncles and what their growing up life was like. And he would always oblige us when it was like, "Tell us a story about Jalibu." "Okay, everyone come on." And we would get to listen to those stories and be terrified, absolutely. He took us on our huge unmanageable family on these big vacations in the summertime, and often resulted in us getting kicked out of hotels or in trouble or yelled at. Called and sang us happy birthday early in the morning to our grandmother. He always made us and everybody that we brought with us feel welcome, and would throw a loser New Year's Eve party every year so that we would have somewhere to go. And I remember after our grandmother passed, he would remind us all the time of like how much she loved us, how much we were like her, how much she talked about us, thought about us, all of those things. And as has been mentioned, once he discovered Siri, he would text us often, but not always clearly, but he was always supportive. A few weeks ago, I got a text at 4 a.m. that said, "Hey, remember when your boys told me snitches get stitches and end up in ditches? I just can't stop laughing about that." My brother Landon shared that it was very rare you would get disapproval from Grandpa, so if you did, you really knew you were doing something wrong. He said that only happened to him a couple of times in his life, but one of them was throwing oranges at cars. I remember that was quite weird. These are just a few memories. We all have a lot, and our grandparents were such a big part of our lives and our development, and it's going to be rough to not have those reminders of the unconditional love that he had for all of us.
I'm gonna make this super short because I know there's pizza in there. I've never seen a tower that big of pizza in my life. So. But I was the grandson that built a little mini casino for my grandpa in his house. And we had 5 slot machines and a poker table. And I would go over there. We'd play poker for sometimes 8 hours a day. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. And I remember had him down on the poker table, and I had a straight in my hand, and I put about $50 down, and I said, "Grandpa, fold your hand." I'm like, "I'm giving you some grandson advice. I don't want to take your money. Please just fold your hand. It's early on in the game. I don't want to take your money." And he's like, "Nope, I'm gonna call." Called that $50 bet, and next card came out, and I said, "Grandpa, I'm all out of money. But I got these sunglasses that I just bought for $200. And I slapped those sunglasses down, and he said, "I'm calling. I'll have Karen run down to the bank and pull out $200. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, he must have something in his hand. And I look over at him, and he's rubbing his hands together. He's shrugging it up, and he's smiling. He's laughing, and he was like a kid on Christmas. I remember that. He was so excited, and he flopped his hand over, and he goes, "I got your glasses! I got your glasses! I got your glasses!" And he grabbed those glasses, and he put them on. And
he wore those glasses. He wore those glasses every day. Every time he'd leave somewhere, he'd put those glasses on. And recently I went into his pickup truck, and sure enough, those glasses were still there. I got those glasses on now. I'm gonna keep wearing these glasses till I lose them in a poker game. But I wanted to keep it short because I know there's pizza, so get out there and enjoy Slice. I know he was really big on Burroughs, so every family function we got Burroughs pizza. So thank you guys.
At the very end, we have Waltzing Matilda, and we have, for those of you that are very, very well talented in music, this is done by an amateur leader, and you're looking at him. So bear with us. But we're going to pass out some words right there in that container can, the tan bag. These are the words to Waltzing Matilda, and while we get the strings set up, it's going to be all of the guitar players and the violinists are grandsons or granddaughters of Norman. And we have probably, you need to share, we don't have enough for every person on these, so please share if you can. And we want to all sing this song. It's be a closing song, and after we have that, there will be pizza. Okay, if we have, does anybody feel they need a copy that doesn't have one? Okay, we'll do this. We'll have a very small violin introduction. Look at me, I'm not a leader, but I'm going to start us off singing. Okay, are you ready? Second, guitars, are you ready? Ready, guys? Thank you very much. Is it Lynn? Is it just pizza? You want to say something? Hold on.
Do we need to bless the pizza? We want to thank you all for coming out and being here. If I could, I'd like to sum this up in a few words. First, I'd like to say, words mean nothing. We pay tribute to Grandpa, but what is important is the heritage that he left us. And I want to say two things about that. First of all is love. He showed great love to all of us. Now, since I'm the so-called patriarch, or maybe Vaughn's a patriarch, so I'm going to preach to you. Carry on that love. Carry on that love to your children, to your grandchildren. We received that from Grandpa. Words mean nothing. Love your children. Secondly, have fun. That's what Grandpa was about. He told me, and I don't need me to drag this on, but he says, Lynn, when you do business, all you're going to get out of it is the fun you had when you were out doing business. Said, have fun. So that's my advice to you. All you're going to get out of this life is your fun and your love. Don't forget that. Remember, words mean nothing. Do it. Now, do we want to close with the blessing on the food, or are we good?
We're good. We're good.
Okay, we're good. Thank you.
Pretty blessed. Blessing in your heart.